I don't think it will ever stop boggling my mind how crazy the Pokemon market has been over the past few years. Really, how Pokemon as a hobby has been over the past few years. Pre-pandemic, right after Pokemon Go released, we saw a huge resurgence of competitive players, of collectors. People started playing Pokemon Go, rediscovering their base set, their old vintage cards, things like that. You had a lot of people kind of come back into the hobby, and competitive play did see an uptick where a lot of people were going to tournaments and things like that, but that really started going downhill right around the time of Crimson Invasion coming out, so it only lasted for a little bit, maybe a year and a half or so, and then things started to go downhill, and you can tell when the pandemic hit, it was like somebody flipped a switch and Pokemon released for the first time. That is how much popularity came into Pokemon. And one of the most interesting things, one of the ways that I like to kind of judge what is going on in the market is just by going to TCGplayer.com. And I just wanted to highlight this because it kind of ties into the video that we're doing today. So if you go to TCGplayer.com to get a feel for what the market is, and I do this a couple times a week, just go to advanced search and then just search. Don't do any filters or anything like that. It just brings everything up. And then if you sort products by best selling, and then on the left hand side there's a bunch of different filters that you can use. You can sort by rarity, you can sort by typing, you can sort by card type. I'm just going to pick cards, so we're not going to look at sealed products, we're just going to look at cards. These, over the past couple years, these first few pages were filled with nothing but vintage product, nothing but base set, nothing but jungle, nothing but older Wizards of the Coast era sets. That's what you would see on the first few pages. There might be a scoop up net that pops up, there might be a Drizzile that pops up, but for the most part the pages were filled with just vintage product. This was completely different pre-pandemic. It was only filled with pretty much competitive cards like VS Seeker, Cynthia, Dedenne, or Tapu Lele, things like that people really needed as staples for their decks. And now if you search for it, it is just nothing but art rares and alternate arts. You still have some vintage product that's sprinkled in here and there, but for the most part, it is just everything is constantly changing. The Pokemon market is so dynamic. It's just constantly moving left and right all over the place. And today we've been talking about alternate arts for the past couple videos. We're going to continue that trend, and we're going to go over some forgotten alternate arts that really made their first appearances at the end of Sun and Moon. We talked about the sets at the end of Sun and Moon, Cosmic Eclipse, Unified Minds. We're actually giving away a Unified Minds booster box. All you have to do is go back, watch the video from last Friday if you want to enter to win that. But we're going to talk about some promos that were introduced to the Pokemon market really at the end of the Sun and Moon era, and even a little bit prior to that during the X and Y era that a lot of people don't think about, but those are technically considered alternate arts, and they're kind of forgotten as we continue to watch this alternate art craze. A lot of people compare alternate arts of the modern day to gold stars. Now, I don't get that association. I don't think that they're going to be as popular as gold stars because gold stars were printed way less than some of these modern products that we get right now. Now, Gold Stars actually did have a better pull rate than what we see from some of these alternate art cards. However, there is just so many more alternate arts in existence, whereas Gold Star cards were kind of numbered. So I'm curious to know what you think in the comments section down below. Let me know what you think if you compare alternate arts to Gold Stars. I think alternate arts are just their own genre. I think they're just their own niche in the market as we move forward, as collectors, as enthusiasts start looking for better arts, for Pokemon to up their game even more. And I think that's why Pokemon is continuing this alternate art feel with art rares and special art rares that we're going to see introduced in Scarlet and Violet. So we're going to look at these forgotten alternate arts. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button down below. Leave a like, leave a comment. It goes a really long way for the algorithm. It helps share the channel a little bit. We're going to start out by looking at this alternate art end. So the first appearance of a full art end came during the Black and White era. It was a huge deck card. A lot of people had to use 4 of them in their deck because it really did well with disruption, messing up your opponent's hand, especially if they only had 1 prize card left. You could play an N. They would only be able to draw 1 card because that's the amount of prize cards that they have left. So a lot of times you would hear in competitive play N to 1, meaning you brought your opponent's hand down to a size of 1 card, and then they would just struggle. They would just draw and pass because they couldn't do anything to find that 1 card to kind of shift the game in their favor, help them take their last prize card. But if we look at the past year of data for a lot of these, alternate arts aren't the only, or the standard alternate arts, the one we're used to talking about, aren't the only ones that have really increased. Pokemon has continued to see this giant gain in popularity, in demand, and I wanted to highlight some of these so that way you guys could take a look at them. Maybe there's some pieces that you wanted to add to your collection. Some of them are still relatively cheap, but still very, very cool cards. This alternate art N currently selling for $48.48. It's right off of its one-year high of $49.65, but you can see what it did throughout all of 2022. Just steady organic growth pretty much through the entirety of the year. It's over doubled in price at the beginning of 2022. It started at $24.59 and just skyrocketed up from there. Spent every single month gaining more and more all the way up until December of 2022, where it did hit that one-year high. It's backed off a little bit, but still way closer to its one-year high than its one-year low. Next up, we've got the Karen. A lot of these alternate art, full art supporters can be found in that XY Premium collection box. This was a special set, a high-class set that got originally released in Japan, and then we got a bunch of the promos in a collection box that came out, a premium collection box. This Karen, for example, that N that we just talked about, these were both in there. You can see the Karen kind of up and down, but really started taking off a little bit over the past couple months since November. It hit a one-year low in July of $20.68. You can see it's gained about 40%, so it's had a really good run over the last 6 months or so. Started to see a little bit of a climb in September, leveled off a little bit until November, and then really saw a spike right around the same time that we saw a lot of those other alternate arts spiking. Jumped all the way up to $28.44. It's sitting currently at $28.38. That's just off of its one-year high. If we look at the Shaman EX, another card that was really, really popular during competitive play. This is an alternate art promo with the Rayquaza in the background there. Obviously highlighted from the Roaring Skies set. It was huge, huge. Everybody played 4 in their deck because it was such a big way to draw consistency throughout a tournament, throughout a match. You could just lay a Shaman down, draw cards to try and find more cards that you needed to either disrupt your opponent's hand or maybe find energy or something that you needed to kind of set up your Pokemon, your main attacking Pokemon. You can see this one a little bit different, more of a horseshoe type graph here, but in the opposite direction. You can see it hit its peak in about July of 2022. That's where it hit a high point of $31.42, coming off of a low that it hit in February of 2022 of $23.47. It dropped down closer to that $27 mark, started to recover a little bit, but still sitting at $27.87 currently, so right in between its one-year high and one-year low. With the resurgence of EXs coming back, it'll be interesting to see how some of these EXs do that weren't the original EXs, but kind of the XY era EXs, the black and white era EXs. It'll be interesting to see moving forward how those continue to improve or decline. The Yveltal EX, this one's really cool with Yveltal and Xerneas on the card. This is an alternate art promo. This one is super, super cool, and you can see for the past year, it's done a whole lot of just gains over and over again. In January of 2022, it hit a low point of $20.54. It's gained 50% over the past year, so it's done a very strong job. In December, it hit a one-year high of $31.94. It's actually continued to climb up ever since then. $32.05 is where it's currently sitting, but just consistent gains over the past year. Every single month, it's moved up and up. You don't have those valleys like you do with a lot of other cards. The Togepi and Cleffa and Igglybuff is just an absolutely gorgeous card. I love the colors. It pops extremely well. This is an alternate art promo. You can see in February of 2022, it was at a one-year low of $22.13. A lot of these alternate arts right around the same price point, which is really cool. It spiked a little bit in April, jumped up to $28 before leveling off a little bit, and then going back down. You can see it hit $24, so a little bit lower in September. Not quite as low as its one-year low, but definitely lower than what it was in April, and then started leveling off a little bit and then shot up. $30.84 is where it's currently at. That's a one-year high for this lovely Togepi and Cleffa and Igglybuff. Then we've got the Delinquent. This is another alternate art promo. This is originally from the Breakpoint set. Really cool looking card with Cynthia there. In January of 2022, it was at a one-year low of $16.81 before starting to climb a little bit in April and then backing off. Very consistent from April to September, just very level, very flat, and then started to take off a little bit more. You can see some consistent growth up until December before it leveled off and just kind of flattened out. $25.70 is where it's currently sitting. That's right off of its one-year high, which it hit in November of $26.46. Then we've got the Mega Lucario EX. I miss Megas. Megas were so much fun in the game. It's kind of like a situation where you don't know what you have or don't know what you had until you don't have it anymore. Mega Lucario EX, really cool looking card. Originally from the Furious Fist set. There's a couple different variants in the Furious Fist set. There's a regular art and there's also a secret rare. They didn't have full art megas back that early on. It took a little while for them to release full art megas, so a very cool looking card here. $13.79 was its 1 year low, which it hit in April of 2022. Then really started consistently climbing. You can see it's up about 40% over the past year. It's sitting at $18.13 currently. That's right off of its 1 year high of $19.35. Next, we're going to look at the Blacksmith card, another card from that XY Premium collection that we were talking about before, another alternate art promo, full art promo. Originally, Blacksmith was printed in the Flashfire set, but you can see in February of 2022, it was down to $8.95, and then it kind of skyrocketed right away, right over the span of a month. In March, it jumped all the way up to a 1 year high of $10.69, and it stayed relatively level throughout the entirety of 2022. You can see it sitting at $10.19. So not a huge gain last year for this Blacksmith, but the 20% gain that it did have happened extremely fast and then just pretty much stayed flat for the entirety of the year. But that's what I'm talking about some of these very interesting to look at. Hex Maniac, another card from that premium collection. I believe this was originally printed in Ancient Origins, but don't quote me on that. It might be something else. At one point in time, this was down to $23.18. That was back in February of 2022. Stayed relatively flat for the first half of 2022 up until September, and then really started taking off. You can see it's over doubled in price, sitting at a 1 year high currently of $49.29. Shauna is the next one. Shauna's been reprinted a couple times. Obviously, we have a Shauna that we printed, or that we had printed in Fusion Strike, so we still have a full art Shauna that's currently in competitive play in format. In February of 2022, it was at about $34 and on the downward decline. In July, it hit a 1 year low of $27.15 before rebounding a little bit. This Shauna in specific is the alternate art variant from one that was printed in Fates Collide. In September, it jumped up closer to that $35 mark, leveled off a little bit, hit a 1 year high of $38.40 in November. It's backed off a little bit, sitting at $36.21 currently, but still much closer to its 1 year high than its 1 year low. Then we're going to look at a few of these tin promos, the alternate art tin promos that we've had. The Garchomp and Giratina, very cool looking card. This was at $5.36 at the beginning of 2022 in February, and just real consistent growth throughout the entirety of 2022. You can see a little blip there in September where it backed off about $1 or so, but then continued to rise up until October, where it hit really close to a 1 year high. Stayed very level after that. In December, it hit $11.80. Currently, it's sitting at $11.78, but over double in price. Then we've got the Espeon Deoxys GX, another really cool looking card. This is from a collection box. If you look, the entire first half of 2022, extremely flat, extremely level. It started out the year right around that $11 mark. In April, it hit a 1 year low of $10.41. Didn't really get past $11 until September, and then it started skyrocketing. We saw it double in price basically up into December, where it hit $22.26. Now it's backed off a little bit, sitting at $19.79, but still much closer to that 1 year high than that 1 year low. Then we've got the Lucario and Melmetal GX. This one's also really cool. Pretty much the same story though, relatively flat for the entirety of 2022 up until September. In February of 2022, it hit a 1 year low of $4.09, and then in September it started to take off a little bit. You can see it's at a 1 year high currently of $7.82. Then we've got the Pikachu and Zekrom GX. This was at $9.68 in April. Pikachu and Zekrom was a huge card in competitive play. This tag team GX, once it got knocked out, your opponent got to take 3 prizes, but they were also beefed up a lot more, so the tag team GX has definitely played an impact, with Pikachu and Zekrom being kind of the main culprit there at regional events. In April of 2022, it hit a 1 year low of $9.68, then saw some really consistent growth up until September. Then it kind of flattened out, leveled out until December, where it started taking off. Now it's currently sitting at a 1 year high of $20.13, so it's over doubled in price over the past year. Then we've got this cool Mewtwo and Mew GX, obviously from Unified Minds. This is a Sun and Moon promo. In April of 2022, it was down to $19.11. Saw some fairly consistent growth, but it did have a little bit of blips here and there along the path. In July of 2022, it dropped all the way down to that $20 mark before starting to rise a little bit. And then we saw a little bit more consistency from it up until December. You can see it's done really well over the past month, sitting at $26.73 currently. That's a 1 year high for that card. The last card that we're going to look at is probably one of my favorites. This is the Umbreon and Darkrai. We talk about the Moonbreon all the time. Everybody talks about it with the skyline in the background. This combines the Umbreon and the Darkrai together, which are two very, very big Pokemon with the Skyline behind it. In February of 2022, this was sitting at $13.68, so this is way cheaper than that Moonbreon from Evolving Skies. Relatively flat for the first half of 2022, all the way up until September. It was right around that $17 mark. Then it started to take off in November. It hit a one-year high of $27.53. It backed off a little bit in December and then started to rise a little bit. It's currently sitting at $24.59. That's still way closer to its one-year high than its one-year low, almost doubled in price over the past year. That is it. That is all the promos. There's a few more that you can kind of look at on your own, but these are really the introduction of alternate art. Some of these promos that we saw on the end of XY, the beginning of Sun and Moon, before they started releasing them in some of the sets like Cosmic Eclipse, Team Up, Unbroken Bonds, Unified Minds, and then obviously the huge plethora that we've had during the Sword and Shield set. So let me know in the comment section down below what you think of these alternate art promos, how you think they're going to fare down the road. If you're comparing them to Gold Stars, they're super cool. That's one thing that I know for sure, is that they are super cool to collect. Really cool artworks. I really appreciate what Pokemon does with all these. I'm a big, big fan. If you enjoy the content, and if you're a big, big fan of me, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. Leave a like and a comment. Goes a long way, like I said, for the algorithm. I am not going to be here tomorrow for the live stream. We will unfortunately not have a video on Thursday either. I have a couple things that I need to take care of, and then hopefully we'll be back on Friday giving away that Unified Minds booster box. Guys, thank you so much for everything. I really appreciate you. I will talk to you soon. Until next time, peace.